health is very key if you want to get optimum production, be it dairy, be it bee farming, whatever agri-sector that you are doing in the livestock space, you have to make sure that your animal is in good shape. And for you to do that, you have to make sure that you are walking the journey with a professional vet. Now today here in the United States of America, Idaho State, we will be speaking to the state vet of this particular region, and he will be shedding more light on what farmers, especially farmers in this region who have over 10,000 cows in their farms, what do they need to do to make sure that all these animals are in good health, all these animals are producing milk and meat as they're supposed to. That conversation is what we will be getting into as from right now. Joined by the state vet of Idaho. Thank you so much, Scott, for making time to be with us today. But before we even get into the conversation on animal health, please just shed more light on what your job entails.
So the state veterinarian of Idaho in this state is concerned with a couple of things. So we regulate the dairy industry in Idaho. So the Department of Agriculture, we have inspectors that come out and make sure all the dairies in Idaho meet all of the sanitary and cleanliness requirements, as well as the environmental regulations. So we responsibly manage all the nutrients and waste that comes off of these properties. Then in addition to that, we oversee animal health. And so any type of contagious disease, any concern like that, the state veterinarian's office is responsible for investigating. If we have to find an animal that's affected by a certain disease that could damage an industry, something like tuberculosis or brucellosis. So we have to investigate that, and we try to minimize the damage that it could cause, and we remove those animals and take whatever precautions are necessary to preserve the industry.
Right. How big is the dairy sector here in Idaho? When I got here, I was told you are the kings of potatoes, you know? So how big is the dairy sector?
So Idaho is the king of potatoes, but actually the dairy industry in Idaho is 3 to 4 times bigger than the potato industry.
Right.
So the state of Idaho is the #3 dairy state in the nation. California is the #1 state, and then Wisconsin. And then Idaho's #3. And so Idaho has 350 dairies in the entire state, and we milk entirely about 700,000 cattle altogether.
In a day?
In one day. So those are all the dairy cattle that are on all the farms in Idaho.
Right.
Now, if you contrast that to a state like Wisconsin, they have about 6,000 farms. And each of those farms only has about 300 cows or so. We have, on average, about 2,700 cows on one farm.
All right. So most of the farmers have about 2,700 cows
on average
here in Idaho.
That's right.
But now we have those who have more.
Yep.
How big can the herd get here in Idaho?
So the largest farms that we have in Idaho have 35 to 40,000 cattle just that they're milking on that facility.
Right.
Now they're very big. The dairy that we're on today milks about 10,000 cows a day. But I think one of the reasons that Idaho is such an advantage to milk your cows is we have a very favorable climate. So it doesn't get too hot and humid here, and it doesn't get too cold. And so a wide range of temperatures can be stressful for cattle. And so because it's a much more temperate climate and we don't see those wide fluctuations, it doesn't get that cold. So these cows can stay in a nice open lot like this year round.
Right. So if I walk across all the different farmers, you've said most of them have on average about 2,500 cattle. Is this the breed that is commonly kept here, Holstein?
That's right. So
any particular reason?
So the vast majority of dairies in Idaho milk Holstein cows because Holstein cows are known to produce the most milk by volume. So they usually milk more milk in a day than any other breed of cow.
Right.
So the other breeds of cows that you'll see are like Jersey cows. So Jersey cows don't milk as much, but the quality of milk, they have a higher butterfat. So if you're looking to use the butterfat percentage to manufacture products of milk, you'll want to focus on dairy. But what we're seeing now in recent years is the genetics of dairy cows has changed, and so they're able to produce Holstein cows that have a higher butterfat rate. So you'll have higher production, which is what a Holstein cow gives you, and you've got even a higher percentage of butter fat.
Yep. So the variation of butter content between Holstein and Jersey, the margin is not that big.
In the old days it was much wider, now it's getting shorter.
Right. Now managing a herd, 10,000 cattle, other people have 40,000 cattle.
Yep.
That's a lot.
It really is.
What does a farmer need to do to make sure that these animals are in good health? What are those biosecurity measures that we start with to ensure good health of this cow?
So in general, you know, health and wellness is very simple. So you want good food, good feed, all right? You want a good management program, so good vaccination program and health. You want to have regular exams, all right? And then you also want to have good biosecurity.
Right.
So on a farm this big, you know, you can't examine 10,000 cows every single day,
yes.
all right?
Yes.
So what you do is you look at the trends from day to day. So every cow that gets milked, they measure exactly how much milk she produces, down to the pound, all right? And then if that changes dramatically from one day to the next, the computer knows that, and it sorts the cow into a pen that says, something changed, someone should have a look at her.
And does it mean something changes? Does it have to be something bad that has happened? Or
not at all. So you want to keep a close eye on the cows that have just calved, those fresh cows that are just come into milk. So they're at a little more risk of reproductive disease, so their udder is becoming full of milk and they can get mastitis, okay? So after they calve, they want to make sure they clean the placenta out. That's called metritis, all right? So those can cause a dramatic fluctuation in an animal's health and their production.
Right.
Another thing that you see is respiratory disease. So when you have dramatic changes in temperature, like overnight, the temperature would drop 20 to 30 degrees, the cattle will be stressed as a result of that. And respiratory disease is a common thing you have to deal with as well. But it's also an advantage because it's a dry climate here in Idaho. So that's another reason we try to minimize that.
Right.
So if you can identify cows before they're really sick, so you don't want to have to wait till a cow has a runny nose and depressed, is off feed.
Pneumonia.
You want to try to treat them as soon as you think something just might be wrong. So that's where technology is such an advantage.
That's cost effective.
Very cost effective.
So sorting is coming in at that point.
So if you can treat a cow for something that is just a little bit of a problem before it gets to be a really big problem, that saves money. It's better for the cow. So they can milk longer. They're happier and healthier. So
is that why they have is it a marking at the ear?
So right there, if you look in in the left ear right here, you can see there's a white tag. See inside the yellow tag, there's a little button. Here, bend down. See right down there? See that button in her ear right there? So that's called an RFID tag. It's radio frequency identification. So when they pass in front of the scanner, when they get on the milker, or when they come sorted out into the pen, the machine will read the radio frequency, and that's how we keep track of how much milk she produces every day. So that tag is her identity.
Tag is here, inside
it's inside it's inside the no, just one. So the yellow tag is how I can identify the cow by looking at her. She's 11936. But the little button is in there, and that's a scanner. And so it's the same kind of technology. If you go to if you go skiing, you have an RFID ticket or something like that, and you can scan that you can get into a a show or a concert or something. So these animals, we monitor their health by being able to track what they do from day-to-day basis. Dairy cows are metabolic athletes. I mean, they produce 100 pounds of milk a day. That requires a lot of energy, it requires a lot of feed, and it requires them to be in really good health. If you're an athlete and you're not in the best of health, you won't be able to run your race. You won't be able to swim your race. And so cows are the same way. And so the faster that you can identify any type of fluctuations in their productivity, it gives you the opportunity to see if there's something affecting their health.
Does it matter which ear you put the button? Does it have to be a particular ear? It can be any?
Yes.
All right. Also, I've noticed there's the whole concern on taking care of the feet of the cow.
That's right.
Talk to us about that, what you need to do, and why that is very important.
So just like I said, reproductive diseases and respiratory diseases can affect cow's production. If a cow is lame, if she can't walk, that's stressful, and that affects her production. So keeping cows' feet clean so they don't get infected and they don't get damaged is a way to also preserve the health and the production of the cow. So they have to have their feet trimmed on a regular basis.
How regular?
Usually about 2 to 3 times a year.
Okay.
And so they'll get them on a big table and they'll tip them on their side. They'll put a big strap on them, they just lay them on their side, and someone comes and trims their feet, keeps their toes nice and short, and then the foot baths that you saw in the milking barn over there, that sprays disinfectant on there to get any type of disease, anything that could cause lameness on the cow's feet. So a cow that has good food, has no respiratory disease, and can walk, you know, without any lameness, that's the healthiest cow that's going to give the best milk.
And they are sprayed every time they come for milking?
Right. So when they walk out of milking, they just get a little mist of disinfectant on their feet to help preserve their feet health.
Right. So for a farmer who has so many animals, like here 10,000, and there's more who have more, how often should they invite a vet into their farm to just make sure that as much as they have technology, they're still working with the guidance of a vet?
So there's 2 things that you would need a veterinarian for. So health programs, okay, and then nutrition. A lot of farms this size, a veterinarian and nutritionist here probably once a week or once every other week. They're here on a regular basis just to check in. And so they'll review the data that Ryan was showing you on the computer to say, okay, here's what we're seeing with production in this group. Is there something that we need to change in the nutrition that could help them? And then look at, based upon climate, maybe we need to vaccinate for something differently for certain diseases. They may be more significant to this group of cows. So having a good relationship and regular contact with a veterinarian is very important.
Right. Talk to us about common diseases that would attack cows in this region, and also shed more light on whether sometimes there's an outbreak of a particular disease and it's just spreading over different animals.
So for someone like me, I don't like to talk about outbreak of diseases because that can have a very large impact on an industry. So one disease that's very unique to Idaho that the rest of the United States does not have to deal with is brucellosis. So the wildlife in Yellowstone Park, all right, that live in, there's a national park that borders Idaho, Wyoming, and Montana. It's called Yellowstone Park with Old Faithful, the geyser. The wildlife that live in there actually have brucellosis, and we can't eradicate it from the wildlife. So we have to make sure that the cattle in Idaho don't get exposed to brucellosis. So we have to vaccinate all of them. We have to test them regularly. They don't have to do that in other states because brucellosis is not a disease anywhere else in the United States. Just in Yellowstone Park. And so Idaho and then Montana and Wyoming, the other states that border, we have to work that. So that is unique. The good thing is our program is so aggressive that we are able to identify cattle that are infected before they have a chance to spread it. That's how you prevent an outbreak, is test a cow regularly, and if you can find one that's infected before she's had a chance to spread it to the next one, that's how you prevent a much larger problem. And that's the same case for any disease that we have, whether it's tuberculosis, whether it's any type of respiratory disease that's contagious. You work with the veterinarian at the dairy and the producer. What can you do to manage the spread of a disease so it doesn't affect a larger herd, or even worse, you know, area producers around? We don't want that to be the case.
Right. So you've also mentioned that farmers need the vets a lot for nutrition purposes. And we can see the system being used here is the total mix ratio.
The TMR.
Do you recommend this?
I do. So the nutrition is something that, you know, the state veterinarian's office, we don't have recommendations. We deal with spread of disease. We look to professional nutritionists and veterinarians to make those recommendations. But, you know, every TMR is going to be different on each dairy. Everyone does it a little differently. Depends upon where you can get all of your commodities from. Depends upon what time of year. Depends upon what stage of lactation that they're in. The dry cows that are going to be calving in 2 months need to be fed a different type of feed than what the lactating cows are. So it's very complicated. And if you don't pay attention to that, that can dramatically impact a cow's production. Especially if you don't get the dry cow ration right. As soon as the cow calves, you can cause several problems if you don't have the ration correct. So they can get milk fever is what they call it.
If you don't do what correctly?
So if you don't feed the dry cattle, so you have to dry, so if you dry the cows off for for 2 months before they calve, they don't get milked.
Yes, yes.
Then if you don't feed them correctly while they're dry, they're going to be at risk for other diseases right when they calve.
Right.
So they have to have enough calcium in their diet. That's called milk fever. They also will be more likely to retain their placenta. So right, if they don't calve correctly, all of those relate to a proper feed ration. So nutrition is so important.
Yeah.
And I think opportunities for people to get into nutrition, it's very specific, it's very highly trained, and there's a lot of different things that you can do based upon the area of the country you live in.
Right. I think I need you to just shed more light on the dangers that a farmer will experience if they do not feed their dry cow correctly. You've stopped milking because they're pregnant.
Right.
I don't feed them the right nutrients that they need.
So when you're not milking, you don't need the same amount of energy. All right. So if these cows are all in milk, okay, and it's a high energy feed because they're producing milk, that takes a lot of energy. So you have to dry the cows off. They need a rest period before they calve and come into their next lactation. So when they're pregnant, when you're about 60 days out before they're going to calve, you'll dry them off. So now they don't need all that energy anymore. So you change the feed ration, okay? But you know they're going to start milking again in about 2 months. So you need to balance that ration correctly. If you don't, when they come back into milk, they could be at risk for a disease. So one of them is called milk fever, all right? And it's what we call it in the United States. So milk fever happens when, you know, what is one of the largest components of milk, one of the nutrients? Calcium is very high in milk. So when a cow's calcium content in her body gets dropped into her milk, she doesn't have any left for herself. And that can cause them to become very weak. That's right. And that can be an emergency. So you have to come out and give them calcium. If you have a correct feed ration, all right, during the dry period, then you don't have to worry about that. But it's very important that you watch that and monitor a feed ration to make sure when she does calve, she won't be at risk for something like milk fever.
So once they give birth and we have our calves, a very tiny, adorable calves.
Very adorable, yes.
What are those key elements in the nutrition that we also need to achieve to make sure that this calf is off to a good start? So
the calving ration, obviously they need milk, all right? So colostrum is a big portion of their diet. So the colostrum contains the building blocks of a good immune system. And so they need to get colostrum in the first few hours after they're born, and then they'll need to be raised on milk and slowly transitioned into feed. But you know, you saw the calving pen we had over there, so a very clean environment. That was very fresh straw. It's changed regularly, and once they get their colostrum and they get, you know, fed milk and kept in a very clean environment, that's going to get them off to the right start. And then they'll start off with a vaccination program that we talked to the veterinarians about. But, you know, good biosecurity, like you said before, you don't want to expose a brand new baby calf to a potential disease or bacteria or something that adult cows have already been able to combat. You want to give them as much cleanliness as you can and slowly build them up to be able to fight off diseases like an adult could.
Even as human beings who are handling the cows, there are some measures that we need to take to make sure that we're also safe to interact with this cow. Talk to us about those measures.
So there are some diseases, they're called zoonotic diseases, that can spread from animals to people, all right? And you know, in general, whenever you come onto a facility that has livestock, so we're wearing boots, all right? So we're gonna take these off, we're gonna scrub our boots, we're gonna wash our hands, all right? If we're touching any of the feed or any of the animals. Now, we don't wanna take that to another dairy or any other livestock facility, because whatever they have here, they seem to be able to manage it very well. But every dairy is different. And so whatever pathogen, disease that is well managed here, the next dairy that you go to may not have been exposed to it. So you may be bringing a disease from one facility to a next. So having, when the milk truck comes in, you saw that when the milk truck pulls up, it doesn't come anywhere near the animals. So the silos are way over there. It never crosses any feed. It never comes anywhere close to the cattle. So that's how you have good biosecurity. Keep the milk that's being loaded onto the truck and taken to the plant to be processed,
Right.
don't bring those anywhere near the animals. That's good biosecurity, because if the milk truck is driving right down this aisle here, it's going to track all of this material, pathogens possibly, to the next farm, because those trucks have to go to one farm to the next to keep picking up milk.
Great.
So that is just really good planning. This farm does a really good job of that, of having good biosecurity, and I think every person that works on a livestock facility should be able to have a good knowledge of how to not spread disease from one facility to another.
All right. Finally, just talk to us about, are there enough opportunities for the young people in agriculture?
I think agriculture is one of the most wonderful industries that a young person can get involved in. I think there's so many opportunities for software and technology. A lot of the technology that is state-of-the-art is being used right here. So you saw the rotary right there. Do you know that there are actual milking barns that have robots that do all the milking? There's no people. And so they walk into a box and a robot will clean the udder, attach it, and send the animal out, and there's no people anywhere. And so that is a very complicated piece of machinery that is state-of-the-art technology, and I think people need to be made aware that, you know, it's not just farming, it's not just pushing cattle around, it's not just driving a tractor. In addition to that, there's many wonderful business opportunities in agriculture, whether it's trade and selling of commodities, the livestock certainly, and then there's lots of opportunities for ag education. And so all that type of research that's being done, all the research that's being done at facilities like the University of Idaho and other ag institutions throughout the country, we can't make this type of farm have these kinds of opportunities without the research to back it up. And so I think agriculture opportunities, whether it be veterinarians, whether it be researchers, whether it be the producers, it all is I think it's a very interesting and it's a very opportunistic industry that I think people should always take a look at to consider for their career.
Thank you so much, Scott, for that conversation. There's a joke you made earlier that there are more cows than people in Idaho. Is that a joke or it's true?
That is not a joke. That is true. So there are 2.2 million cattle in Idaho, and there's 2.1 million people. And we like it that way.
All right, thank you so very much for shedding more light on animal health and how just to manage such a big herd. Thank you so much for your time.
You're welcome.